My dad grew up in Greer, and I think his daddy, if I'm not mistaken, bought the first Greer High uniforms for their football team. And my daddy grew up in the house right here, and so between there and a house on North Main Street. What I loved was in this particular neighborhood, we did all know each other. Now, there was a good bit of family going on. There were relatives because we were all related, and then this family here was related to that family there, so their houses backed up. So you had some cousin good things going on. From my house that was there on Poinsett Street, I just sat and just counted up 4 blocks and tried to think through everything that covered a radius of 4 blocks in my childhood. And that 4 blocks included, number one, if I got on my bike, I could ride down Poinsett and get to Pine, and from Pine go down to Vanavender. And you just can't believe how many, all of my friends that were right on that little stretch. And of course, riding your bike on the sidewalk was perfectly safe. And so all my friends that I could get to easily, you could ride and go. Then that 4 blocks also, the church, First Baptist, was right across the street, and we might as well have dug a tunnel under the road. I lived at the church. If you went on down another 2 blocks, my dad's office was there, and he had Cunningham Waters Construction Company. My piano teacher, Dr. T.O. Walker, my medical doctor, Dr. Joe Rogers, my dentist. My junior high school, I was in 7th grade when Davenport burned, and but that was 1 block from my house, and the high school is about 4 blocks from my house. If you went left from my house, I was the first house out of downtown. So I could walk downtown, and I remember when I probably was 12, and my daddy said, "Honey, you are too big to walk downtown barefooted. You've got to put some shoes on."
Growing up here was a pleasant experience. Kids roamed the neighborhoods because there was not much danger to any of the kids, and most of the parents knew all the kids, so if you were in trouble, your mother knew it before you got home.
Greer is an incredible place to grow up. On the corner down beside my house is just a gorgeous old house. I think, if I'm correct, it was the first house in Greer with electricity. There were 3 sisters who never married, and they lived in that house. It was the Burgess home. They had what we called the lot. It was just an empty, vacant lot that's right here in the middle of this block. And they let us play, so that was the gathering place for all the children. So all fall and winter, it was football, and then all spring and summer was baseball. But that's where we met up. We all just knew you came to the lot.
When the Davenport High School was in existence up on Church Street, the street that ran in front of that was concrete or cement. One afternoon a week when I was growing up, the city blocked off the Church Street, and because it was cement, we skated on it. And traffic was not allowed to use the street for 3 or 4 hours in the afternoon. But we had a community skating area, which was outside, and we all looked forward. There would be dozens of kids up there skating around the old high school. Parents would bring their kids in from out in the outskirts of town to skate for an afternoon. It's a lot of fun.
From 1965 until 1979, Greer really didn't change. It was the same community, very much, but downtown it was like stepping back into the past.
There was a lot going on in downtown Greer. I remember how many retail places there were down there. You could buy anything in downtown Greer. And from specialty shops like those that catered to men, or jewelry stores and things of that nature. So it was a retail center.
I had a job at the Leader, and anybody who grew up in Greer will remember if you shopped at the Leader, you paid with cash, and then your money and your ticket went into a little vacuum, and that went flying up into the ceiling and across over to the office where they made change. And then the little canister came back and you were given your change. But that was my first job. I sold hose out of boxes.
My favorites were what we call dime stores. They're now, I guess, variety stores today, but they had toy departments. And if you got a week or so ahead on your allowance, you immediately went to the dime store to see what toys were out and tried to buy something. There was a hotel in downtown Greer, and not very large, and it had a really nice restaurant in which people lined up for Sunday dinner.
You got Louise, it's right down the street, and used to eat there a lot. And then you also have the clock was a little further up, but the rest of Greer was known for fine food. Yeah, and in fact, right on this particular spot, there were Lewis's restaurant. All the restaurants were really good. I mean, you could get good food, I'm telling you.
When you look at 50s pictures of downtown Greer, I mean, there's not a place to park. It is full of cars, but you have to think about there were 2 movie theaters, there was an ice cream parlor, there was a lot to do. People came on Saturday, dropped their kids at the movie theater, did their shopping, came back and got the kids and went home. And I think now we still have those kind of businesses where they're individuals and they're families, and they're our neighbors and they're people we know.
My shop is just 2 blocks from here, block and a half. It's on Poinsett Street, and when you pass the furniture store on the right, which is no longer there, then it's now a custard place, and they've replaced shoes for custard. A little unusual, isn't it? But it's real good.
I retired after 27 years as Greer's librarian. I have a lot of interesting stories from the library. Some I cannot tell for the privacy of people. But we had a lot of fun in the old library. People swore there was a ghost there. I said it was the squirrels in the attic. Not to worry, we didn't have a ghost. I enjoyed the people, and I think that's how I learned so much about Greer and its history, is if you listen to people, they'll tell you a lot of information. Every November, there is what they called the Big Thursday, because they would do it on the first Thursday of November. And it has grown, and they raise a lot of money. And the thing that impressed me was that there were so many clubs, all the churches, it didn't matter what denomination they were, just individual citizens, businesses. People saw that as a wonderful project and worked together. There's many other things. I think the festivals have been great. I worked on the festival board for about 10 years. The Greer Relief, I did some historical research on them, and they go way, way back. They have been, ever since the Great Depression, helping people. And it was always using local people who gave their time and money, and even down to farmers who had extra crops and brought in to feed people. So I think that's the kind of wonderful community spirit that we have.
Cradle roll is when you are born into the church and 2 weeks later get your name in the nursery, because you get started in the nursery. So all of our mothers were, when they were carrying us, we were going to church together, and then literally we just, all through childhood, we spent so many hours in that church. They built a gym when we were there, and so we literally, Sunday school, every one of us, just every Sunday, every Wednesday, we were together all the time. I'll tell you something else that's fun about growing up in Greer is when you grow up and children that you played with, you grow up and we all have children, and then our children marry each other. And that is a blast. One of my dearest friends as well, who lived on Poinsett Street, she was at 303 West Poinsett Street. Her name's Elizabeth Williams, and so when I was expecting, I told her, I said, if I have a little girl, I'm going to name her for you. So sure enough, I had a little girl, and I named her Elizabeth McWhite, and she married Caleb Williams. So I have an Elizabeth Williams.
I often remember who lived where and who their children were and all that kind of thing.
A bunch of us stayed. I mean, a bunch of us stayed. We found wives and kids and all.
My daddy told me one time that when I left to go in the military, and he said, there's one thing I want you to remember. No matter how far you go in this world, never forget where you've been. It took me a while to soak that in, but it's just don't ever get away from your hometown and the way you were raised. So I tried to live by that.
It's kind of funny just playing baseball and basketball in Greer my entire life, and then being able to go to the middle school and play there as a Yellow Jacket finally, then making it to high school, which is a big deal, and finally being a Yellow Jacket there.
Well, that was one of your goals as a youngster, to be a Yellow Jacket, and you achieved that from the 7th grade on. And so that was fun for us because you were so happy to be a Jacket.
Why is Greer so successful? I think that the key is that Greer has an independent spirit. I think that with the progressive chamber and some of our merchant type groups, they began to really look at, well, we don't have to change a lot to be different, if that makes sense. That we can take the strengths of what we have here and build on that. And so then I think we all began to see so much progress then, finally in the 90s, to make it more what we have today. We have a nice museum, and it's free. That was one of the goals of the founder of the museum, who was a retired school librarian. She said, the children of Greer need to know their history, and it needs to be open to everyone free. What has stayed the same? Well, we have businesses that have been here a long time that are run by families. The oldest business in Greer is Wood Mortuary, the oldest continuing. Next is Smith & James, that goes way back, and those are family-owned businesses. Gregory's, family-owned businesses, so it's not that there's some corporation. They're individuals, and they're people that are our neighbors and that we know.
Are there any businesses that you grew up with that had a real good sense of community and got a lot of people involved with it?
Well, there was at one time an ice and coal plant here. A lot of people heated with coal, so there were places you could buy coal. But in the summertime, when watermelons came in, people would take watermelons down to the ice plant and they'd put them in the freezer for 2 or 3 hours, go back and get them and take to the neighborhood and have a neighborhood watermelon cutting, which was a lot of fun. And you had literally a light ice cold watermelon. And I don't know how many times we did that, but we look forward to that in the summer, particularly late summer, July and August, when local watermelons were available.
Perhaps if I was young, I would bring back the Dixie Shoe Shop. But I don't think I see that part, when you get up in age,
The older buildings are still here. And if you look on the sides or the fronts of them, you can see the names of some of the old businesses that occupied them. And those are businesses that I knew and knew the owners or managers of these places.
I would hate to see older usable buildings torn down and put something very modern that would not match the ambience of the community. I think that is a drawing card to people when we say visit historic Greer. There's a charm about eating in a restaurant where you see the original brick walls, or you see an old ad for a product painted on the wall.
I'm just amazed, honestly, when I think of how, really in so many ways, my world was really very small, but it was wonderful within the small confines of that. I just look back on some of the harmless fun that somehow or another our parents knew we were good at heart, you know, and so it was pretty fun.
So is there anything about Greer that you hope doesn't change?
I hope that we can always retain that small town flavor with friendliness, courtesy, and consideration for everybody else. It's been that way pretty much my whole life, and I just hope that can continue for as long as you stay in Greer, and if you have children, they stay in Greer. It was a nice touch for a small town.
I enjoy downtown because it's a stroll through nostalgia.
So when I come into town, I am just flooded with, it's joy. I mean, it's just happy memories. To go to the clock, I mean, you know, if all my high school buddies come back, we gotta go to the clock. It's where we always meet up. And so that is probably, it's just the closeness and the good and the happy memories.
Man, I love Greer. And I tell you, I found a joy in being in Greer.
We had our children here and they grew up here and there just seemed no reason to leave.